Hi, Analisa Six here to bring you the June 2024 astrology forecast for the Sober Curator and my personal blog, The Lady of Leisure. I'm having a day and it's June 4th today. And so I feel like I'm already super behind on getting these videos out to you guys on time. And then you just add in life stuff and it just makes recording videos kind of hard. So I'm just going to preface this by saying that I have a sick dog right now. My dog has kennel cough and we're going on almost a month, I think, of him having a chronic cough. I'm not really sure how to record videos in my apartment without him somehow being in the ether. So I'm hoping that the noise cancellation of Zoom is good enough that you guys don't have to hear him coughing too much, because he also is pretty good at settling down and not coughing a lot. He also just farted, so he coughs and farts at the same time. I don't know. My poor dog. He's old. He's a senior. He's got a lot of things going on with his body. He's on medication. I'm doing it. He's got herbal supplements. He's on meds. I'm doing all the things, but it's just, he just farted really loud again. It's super distracting for me. So it's making getting through all of this hard. I've restarted and started this video so many times, and I'm just like, just gonna have to do it. We're just gonna have to tough it out. June is an interesting month. I personally have been really excited for the astrology of June. We start out every month of June in Gemini season. So just to talk about Gemini, the sign, it is the third sign of the zodiac. It is the mutable air sign of the zodiac. I actually just decided to put my dog away in the other room. We'll see if he can handle that. Sometimes he gets frustrated. As he was starting to have a coughing fit and just very loud. So going back to Gemini. So Gemini is the third sign of the zodiac. It is the mutable air sign. So the mutable signs represent being adaptable to their environment. Gemini being mutable air. Air is the element that represents our relationship to our minds, consciousness, communication. And Gemini rules the third house in astrology, which is the house that represents communication, simplified learning, perspectives. It's also the house that siblings fall under. And you'll notice in the sign of Gemini, we have the twins, Castor and Pollux, who were siblings, obviously. The Lover's card is ruled by Venus in Gemini. We have a lot of different kind of ways that we could view Gemini. People tend to think of Geminis as being a little bit unhinged, and mutable energy can feel that way because it's very expansive. It likes to adapt. It likes to move quickly. It's very scattered. Geminis are known for being kind of scattered. The Dr. Jekyll, Mr. Hyde kind of, dichotomy with Gemini is kind of one of those shadow-like qualities. Gemini has an outer expressive energy, and then there's also a really intense inner energy as well. Gemini is ruled by the planet Mercury. Mercury also rules the sign Virgo. Mercury is the planet that represents communication, travel, technology. What else? We could get really esoteric with it, but I actually discuss most of that in the Gemini season podcast with Melissa LaFera, which is on her YouTube channel, Energetic Principles. So I'm not going to talk anymore about it, so that you can go find that podcast episode if you want to go further into the symbology of Gemini and what Gemini season has in store. But for June, we always start out, with the sun in Gemini. So let's talk about kind of where everything is starting out June. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen, and we'll get the chart up. Let me minimize some of the things that I have on here before I do that. Okay, so here we have the chart for June 1st. So we start out with the sun and Venus in a conjunction. It's also known as a cazimi. That happened on June 2nd. We also have Mars in Aries at 24 degrees, conjunct Chiron. It's starting to move away from Chiron. Jupiter is now in Gemini. So Jupiter entered Gemini at the end of May, and now Jupiter is going to be in Gemini for the next year. And this is a really intense new energy for us all because Jupiter is in detriment in the sign of Gemini, which means it rules Sagittarius. And when it's in detriment, it's the furthest away from where it's comfortable. And it's an energy that it's not, as familiar with. Jupiter is considered to be the great benefic in astrology. So we're always experiencing some form of abundance or expansion and good fortune wherever Jupiter is. But when it's in a sign that it's not as comfortable in, that can kind of feel, a little bit wonky. So Jupiter in Gemini over the next year is going to be centered around expanding Gemini themes. So we talked about the mind, communication, simplified learning, fact-based learning. All of those things we're expanding, we're growing, we're learning more about during the Jupiter and Gemini transit. We start out with Saturn at 18 degrees of Pisces in June. Uranus is still in Taurus. Neptune is at the anaretic degree point for the entire month of June. So what that is we've critical degree points in astrology. We've got 1 degree, 15 degrees, and 29 degrees. Those are all considered to be critical degree points. And the 29th degree point is the very last degree of a sign, and Neptune's going to be at 29 degrees of Pisces for all of June. It's going to be at this critical degree point as it's building to enter into Aries later on. I think it doesn't enter until next year, actually, because it's going to station retrograde. But yeah, it'll enter Aries next year. So we're kind of in this little teeter-totter, anaretic bubble for June. It'll station retrograde, go back a few degrees, then station direct, go back to that anaretic degree point later. So later on in the year, we'll talk about that and be like, what were you doing during June that you're revisiting? So all of that kind of stuff. And then Pluto is retrograde at 1 degree of Aquarius for the entire month of June as well. So that's the flavor of starting out June. Let's go ahead and get into each week. So June 1st happened on a Saturday. And then when we had Sunday the 2nd, we entered into Mercury making a sextile to that Neptune. So Mercury in Taurus making a sextile to Neptune before it entered into Gemini on the next day. The moon also entered Taurus on this day. So Mercury sextile Neptune is a really positive energy for creativity, artistic projects. It can also make us feel really tired, slow, sleepy. It's a good day to kind of be working with art. Taurus also really enjoys being in nature, connecting to our spirituality with the Neptune and Pisces. So there's a lot of romantic energy around creativity over the weekend, starting June out. Then on the 3rd, we have Mercury entering its home sign of Gemini. So Mercury is the ruler of Gemini. So Mercury likes to be here. And Mercury is going to be here up until the 17th, it looks like. Mercury in Gemini also makes a trine to that 1 degree Pluto. So Mercury trining Pluto. Mercury aspects to Pluto can do a couple different things. It's often associated with kind of like an investigative detective type energy when it's in the sign of Scorpio. And Pluto being one of the rulers of Scorpio still kind of holds some of those themes. So Gemini likes to pull things apart. It's very analytical. It's, kind of like a research mind. What are the facts of a situation? How can I put all the pieces together? And so Mercury making this aspect to Pluto, where Pluto's, maybe more of this kind of underneath the surface, subconscious healing growth. We might be having some of those themes from the subconscious coming to the surface in our minds and going, what do I need to pull apart? What do I need to heal? What do I need to examine, work through, and assess? Gemini energy is very analytical. Aquarius energy is a lot more socially focused. So how am I, perceiving and reflecting on my relationship to community and how I'm getting along with people in my world? How am I contributing to society? Those types of things. That definitely, I feel like, has been coming up for me. Today's the 4th. And, that was the energy frequency that we were kind of entering really yesterday, but we're still feeling it today on the 4th. And so it's one of those things where when I'm delineating kind of some of this stuff and thinking about it. I always reflect on how I'm being impacted because that's my filter, that's my experience. And I will say that over the last couple of days, I have been really thinking about my role in my community, what I contribute to my community or society, if anything. If anything, my friendships, how I communicate with people. If you've had any communication misunderstandings or conflict, you might be in a position where you're really reflecting on how you're communicating and whether or not your perceptions are accurate about things. Pluto energy can always kind of amplify our psychic abilities or our intuitive abilities. And so, air isn't emotional about it. Air is more practical and analytical about it. So there could be kind of some of this awareness coming up where you're assessing it in a more practical way that's not quite as emotionally driven. However, we are in a balsamic moon phase right now. And so the balsamic moon happens right before the new moon. And it's been really common in my life to feel very emotional in a balsamic moon. I also have a lot of people in my life, women specifically, that are, identifying as women at least, that also tend to feel very emotional during a balsamic moon. And part of that, I think, is if you're unfamiliar with what a balsamic moon is, it's the phase of the moon right before the moon turns new. And it's the darkest point of the moon. And so when that's happening from a spiritual metaphysical perspective, we're imagining that this phase is really reflective. It's very like the Hermit card in the tarot, very like this inner journey. We're at a crossroads within, we're working something out, and it can feel just heavy. It can feel really intense because the new moon is all about kind of this setting intentions. Like the balsamic moon is what are we letting go? What are we surrendering? And then when the new moon comes, let's set intentions towards the new. And so oftentimes during a balsamic moon, we can feel this weight of energy that we need to shed or kind of get rid of. And so all of this air energy mixed with this, moon and Taurus balsamic energy might be really having us feeling heavy, and analytical about why we feel that way. On the 4th, we also have the sun and Venus making that cazimi, that exact conjunction. And so, the sun representing like our identity stuff, it represents creation, energy, vitality. Like it has this very, like solar energy is very positive. Like it's a very positive energy, but it's also sometimes can feel like a lot, positive energy can be too much at times. And so what's said is that a lot of times when a planet is in a conjunction with the sun is kind of dominating that planet, just the same way when Pluto's in a conjunction with a planet, Pluto's kind of dominating, the sun can kind of overpower some of the traits of that. Venus, being the esoteric ruler of Gemini, Venus likes to be in Gemini. This is very the lover's card energy here. We have this conjunction, but the sun is still kind of like overpowering it. And so here we might be feeling, this ramp up of Gemini-like energy. Venus represents our connection to other people, also our connection to ourselves. So we can feel this elevated need for connection and connection through communication or intellectual processing of information. Again, the sun kind of overpowering it. Sometimes whenever the sun's involved, it can be, well, this is what I want. This is how I want to connect. This is how I want to feel this. And so, we might have to do a little bit of extra work to think about the other. You'll also notice that we have, I don't want my text messages to show. We also have the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction happening here. It's a pretty intense energy because we have, this balsamic moon energy mixed with the Mercury-Jupiter conjunction. I'm like, today I've been like feeling like I'm having a day, and I'm like, no wonder. And it's interesting too, like if I want to share anecdotally how this energy is making me feel today, I feel very dysregulated. I feel like, Gemini energy can be very anxiety inducing and neurotic. And I feel that way today. And I feel like trying to get my words out has been hard. And Jupiter, is a really big, large energy. So we have this stellium in Gemini, and it's so much, and our minds, our thoughts could be running a million miles a minute in terms of like, what am I doing? What do I need to do? How do I put everything into order? We also have Juno making an aspect to this Venus Sun in Virgo. And then we've got the nodes kind of at a similar degree point right now. So if you see the South nodes at 13 degrees of Libra trining the Sun Venus conjunction, North node sextiling it. So yeah, it's an interesting energy to kind of be thinking about. But yeah, what's your relationship to your community? I think that too, I don't like to get into politics in my astrology because it's not my niche of astrology. I love astrology, politic readers. Like I think it's amazing. That's just not what I am educated on or what my niche is. But these are the types of transits where, we are thinking a lot about the way that we are processing information, like media, that type of stuff. And the fact that Pluto is in Aquarius and we do have so much going on politically right now in our own country, obviously in the Middle East, everything. I mean, the world, right? We always have some kind of thing going on, but it's very elevated right now. This energy is very much centered on media and how we are absorbing information and whether or not the information is true. Having an anaretic degree point of Neptune and Pisces at 29 degrees, it's all really interesting. And when this energy starts to square Neptune later on, we're going to be feeling kind of more what's real, like what's real, what's not real, that kind of thing. Okay, so let's look at the 5th. The 5th is where we have the beginning of our new moon energy, because the moon will be entering Gemini at 1:36 a.m. Pacific time. It's 4:36 a.m. Eastern time. We don't have any major transits at this time. And then the 6th, it's interesting. I thought the new moon was happening on the 5th, but I guess it's happening on the 6th. Haha, shows you what I know so much. You know what it is? It's that this ephemeris, my universal time versus my Pacific time is always a little bit different. But yeah, June 6th, we're going to have our new moon at 16 degrees of Gemini. And so, we can see it here. This is at a different time. I'd have to go back to the time, but we've got Venus, a part of this new moon conjunction too. So new moons are a time for setting intentions. And in Gemini, we think about the themes, communication, the mind, perspectives, the relationship to siblings. It's also the 3rd house theme also has to do with neighbors too. So setting intentions around things in those themes that you want to, manifest or cultivate. Obviously too, when I do the horoscopes, I'll talk about on an individual level, like Aries through Pisces, where setting intentions makes sense to you, because we all have Gemini in a different place in our charts. Like for me, my Gemini energy and where this moon is hitting is in my house of relationships as a Sagittarius rising. So there's a lot of those themes for me in terms of what I need to set intentions towards. Like the Lover's card is totally on point. How do I want to relate to people? What are the relationships that I want to call into my life? How do I want communication to work? What communication patterns do I not want in my life anymore? Those kinds of themes in this chart, for the kind of just, world, it's not a world chart, but for where this chart is, this is the 11th house. So community would be where you're setting intentions, groups of friends, that type of thing. We don't have any other major transits that day, but this moon is going to square Saturn. So there's going to be a Saturn square that might make us feel very dysregulated emotionally. I just already am feeling it so many ways. There could be some depression feelings. We could feel a heightened energy towards escapism in unhealthy ways because we're feeling dysregulated. The advice is kind of, how do you find ways to regulate that are positive? What are healthy forms of escapism? I think art is a healthy form of escapism. So if you need to write, you need to paint, you need to work on music, anything that kind of is creative for you that you enjoy doing, that would be a healthy way to channel some of this energy. The moon's also going to be making a sextile to Chiron on this day. And so the sextile to Chiron is bringing up some of the wounds around identity that might need healing. And we can set intentions towards healing those things, and when I say set intentions towards healing, I mean, we build self-awareness and acknowledge the parts of ourselves that are wounded still. I will bring up an anecdotal example in the sense that I am working on more solo music and I have a lot of wounds around creative projects. And when I decide to start doing something around my creative projects again, sometimes those wounds will get brought to the surface and I'll go, oh, I still have more work I need to do there. So when there's an opportunity like a new moon to set intentions, I might take a piece of paper and write down on a piece of paper what I want to work on healing in myself. And then I'll burn it or I'll put it under a candle that I'm lighting for the moon and I'll meditate on it. I also will do active work by either reading books about how to heal this, articles online, working with a therapist or a spiritual healer, and getting some kind of ideas around how to overcome, whatever the wounds are. I know for me, sometimes just putting pen to paper and just like doing the work is kind of triggering for me because I get a little bit judgmental of my own process. And so I'll kind of have to read some books around letting go of my inner critic stuff to just do the work and to, create better like narratives in my head. Like it's okay when something starts out not perfect and when you have to flub your way through it, because each time you do it and each time you flub your way through it, it gets better and better and better. So I always have these little things I have to do when I'm being creative. With painting, I kind of have to, like, I don't really know how to paint, but I like doing it. So I kind of have to do the same thing. I have to go, don't worry about how bad it looks in the beginning. Just enjoy the process because that's why you're doing it. And then I usually always end up falling in love with whatever comes out of it because I just let it happen. I don't try to force it, but I do hit roadblocks. Like I'll hit kind of these frustrating points. And I think that that's where the setting intentions of like, okay, what is this block bringing up for me? And that's very Saturn. So when we have like these hard Saturn transits during times to set intentions, it's an opportunity for us to kind of overcome what the blockage is bringing up for us. Okay, so the 7th, the moon is going to enter Cancer. We don't have any major transits happening on the 7th, but when we get to the 8th, Venus is going to be making a square to that Saturn. So Venus, she's the planet that represents beauty, relationships, but she's also very much tied to creativity and aesthetics. And so Saturn, being in Pisces, Saturn, can represent an area where we need to be more disciplined or where we need to experience growth. And so there can be tension in relationships during a Venus-Saturn square. I definitely over the last year have learned a lot about Venus-Saturn transits as they've been happening in my chart. And man, are they hard. They're really hard when it comes to your relationships. And so, this might be one of those days where if you're in a partnership with somebody, there's some tension, there could be some miscommunication, some misunderstandings. There can also be some tension with your relationship to self. Again, when we have these things, we might feel a need to escape in unhealthy ways. And so this is also a call to figure out what are some ways that you work through what's coming up for you. How do you process some of these things coming up at this time in a way that is constructive and helps you move forward versus, being frustrated or having a lot of anxiety about it. Mars is also going to be entering Taurus in the evening at 9:35 p.m. Pacific time. And Mars is going to be in Taurus for the rest of June. So Mars, started out the month in Aries where, it's, on the 8th, we're going to have that anaretic degree Mars at that Venus-Saturn square. Oof, oof, oof. No wonder why I'm feeling so chaotic already this week. This ingress into the weekend, I'm just kind of like, I've been excited about June. But some of these transits are they're a little rocky for us, but they're great for creativity. If you can channel that frustration and that anxiety into something productive and artistic and creative, there's a lot there. So I think that it can be really positive. And then Mars entering Taurus, it's been in Aries, likes to be in Aries, very action oriented. Mars in Taurus slows things down a little bit. I like Mars in Taurus in the sense that I'm a fan of Mars in the earth signs, because whenever we have Mars, which is like this willful action oriented energy going through an earth sign, which is practical, pragmatic, get things done, that blend of that energy, it's just like, I'm going to be accomplishing things. I'm going to be doing things. I'm going to be checking off my to-do list. And Mars could probably benefit from that fixity of Taurus to slow down and get more, direct and get more focused on what needs to happen. So I'm looking forward to that. Let's go ahead and go to the 9th, where we're going to have the sun now making a square to Saturn, and the moon is going to enter Leo later on in the afternoon. And so sun square to Saturn, we already kind of experienced the Venus square to Saturn. We had that, new moon energy squaring Saturn too. So, or not new moon, but just, yeah, I mean, it's the moon was squaring Saturn on the new moon day. It's just later degree point than the new moon. But we're this whole week, we're experiencing squares to Saturn, and it's a lot. And I think that, the nice thing about a square to Saturn is that Gemini energy can be so scattered and all over the place, and just analysis paralysis. We think of the Eight of Swords with some of this energy. The Eight of Swords is a card that represents self-created fears, doubts, and worries. We also have the 9 and 10 of Swords. Here's the 10 of Swords. The 10 of Swords, we kind of are forced into a surrender a bit by life circumstances. And then in the 9 of Swords, we might be experiencing some kind of, actual stress and things that are actually really causing us to feel really anxious about a lot of things. So, Saturn in Pisces, has a little bit of a different flavor, but Saturn in Pisces can bring up kind of a lot of existential crises. Like, what's my purpose? Why am I here? Does anybody care about what I'm doing? Like, do I matter? Am I relevant? That kind of stuff. So there's a lot of those feelings this week for everybody. And I think that if I were to think about it from like a alchemical perspective of like, why do we go through these periods? It's because I think everything kind of hits an apex or a peak in life at some point, right? We all kind of hit these little milestones, and then we have to, something has to give. Something has to kind of go through this calcination process and be reborn or start over. Like, things don't just stay. The only constant is that nothing's constant, right? We're always kind of in this flux. And so I think that when we feel these Saturn energies, it's kind of like that. Like, it's like things are kind of peaking. We feel this kind of tension happening. So something's got to give, right? Something's got to change. And so this is kind of where we get pushed into that. Feels kind of like a volcano that's about to burst, and then once it bursts, we get all of that energy out, and then it's ready to move on. So that's how this first week of June really feels to me. If we go to, and then the moon is going to enter Leo later on. So starting out Monday, June 10th, we just have the moon in Leo that day. There's no major transits. We're still kind of in the hangover of the previous week with a lot of the way the energy looks. On the 11th, we are going to have Venus making a sextile to Chiron and Aries. Sextiles are harmonious energies. Venus really wants to bring healing. So hopefully what came up for you over the first week of June that was really intense, just if I were myself, which I'm probably not even going to follow my own advice, but I would write down all the things that come up for me that I know I need to work on. And then hopefully by the 11th, I'm really starting to feel like I'm seeing the way, the path with the Venus sextile to Chiron. Here's the path towards healing some of these wounds. Mars in Taurus is also going to make a square to Pluto in Aquarius. Mars, Pluto square, Taurus square to Aquarius. This can be really hard when we can feel that there's a need for change within a comfort zone or something fixed. We can feel that resistance internally, but this is scary. I don't want to do something new. I don't want to change. But Mars and Pluto are here saying, we gotta experience this tension to grow. You said you want growth. This is how you're going to do it. Mars is after that, the moon will finish its time up in Leo, and then it's going to enter Virgo in the evening. Moon in Virgo can be really positive for getting things done as well. So we'll have that energy over the next couple of days. On the 12th, we have the sun making a harmonious energy to that Chiron and Aries, the sextile to Chiron and Aries, just like how we had Venus doing that a couple days before or the day before. So now we have the sun and Venus both sextiling Chiron. So again, like identity wounds, and even Mercury, is coming up in here in the mix. Identity wounds, we're healing them. I think like as somebody that's self-employed myself, where I'm constantly putting myself out there, um, you know, I know that somebody specifically that I know unfollowed me because I don't think enjoy the fact that I post a lot of selfies or things of myself. The thing is I'm self-employed, right? So I don't have a career that I go plug into and make my money and then I go share my life on social media. Like everything I do on social media is branding for something. And even my personal account like is it's still like it's my music. It's me, my creative stuff. So I've got my tarot astrology account, I've got my dog account for dog training, and then I have my personal account where I do take into account like what I post. And I do post a lot of selfies. And you know what? Selfies for me get the most engagement. And the most engagement on my profile brings more people to my businesses, which then in turn gets me clients. And I would say I get more clients from word of mouth than I do from online marketing or social media, but I do get some clients from social media. So for me, when I'm posting, I'm taking into account that that is one of my free marketing things that I can use as a self-employed person. But when I have people unfollow me or I have people not like my content, I don't really care personally, but I also know that the judgments that people have about me, they're not probably thinking about the fact that this is how I make money. Like I only make money from my content, and most of the content that I do is free. So I'm only making money if people actually not only absorb my free content, but they take that free content and go book a service with me, which my retainer for that's not very good. Like the majority of the people interacting with my content are not booking services with me. So I think that that's kind of been one of my Mercury, Sun, Venus, Chiron, that's been one of my Chiron journeys is how do I not get offended or get my feelings hurt when people that I follow, that I like all their personal stuff and I look at all their business stuff, unfollow me or don't support me because maybe they don't like seeing a selfie that I post or the type of content that I post they don't like. But this is like my business, it's me. Like this is how I make money. So yeah, I think that we're all different in that. Like I have a lot of friends who are self-employed, a lot of friends who are artists. I have friends who are artists and musicians, but they have jobs that they can go plug into. So their social media is just whatever. And I've noticed the difference. Like the people that have a career over here that are using social media just for whatever, they don't get that those of us that we are our career, like just me by myself, like that whole thing. Like if a certain type of post is what's going to get me the most engagement, then I'm going to keep making those posts because that's how I'm getting people to be aware of my services. So I think that identity stuff, so Chiron represents identity stuff, and social media is a big part of our identity expression in today's day and age. In the past, it might have been business cards. I mean, I still do business cards. Nobody ever books me for my business cards. I have better luck on free social media. So it's different for everybody, but I think that, identity wounds around your creative expression, identity wounds at work, what is your identity at work and how are you feeling validated or invalidated? Venus here in relationships, what are your identity wounds in relationships? Sometimes if we have, romantic partners that we don't feel like see us, in our entirety, that can come up and, or friends, I've definitely had friendships where I don't feel seen and I feel like people are misinterpreting me or taking me in a way that I'm not. And that can bring up a wound that needs healing, and also I've had certain things where I've been like, I don't want to be in certain environments, like culturally or different friend groups. Like, I don't want to live in the Pacific Northwest. I'm mixed race Mexican woman, and the level of racism I've experienced in the Pacific Northwest is so much worse than living in California. So it's like, I don't want to be a part of the culture up there. Like, I feel better living in California. Those kinds of identity wounds come up for us. And then we're healing that stuff during the sun Venus sextile to Chiron. We also have the Mercury sextile to Chiron during this. So this little group, the stellium, is doing that. Friday the 14th, we're going to have the sun making a conjunction to Mercury. So we've got a cazimi happening here. And this enhances all of that Gemini energy again. So we might be a little bit more anxious. This could feel like a really busy time with all of that. Oh, that was on that day, June 14th. Let's see here. We've got the moon entering Libra after that too. A lot of air energy happening. Saturday, we're just in the hangover of Friday. We don't have anything specifically aspecting. But on Sunday, the 16th, Father's Day, we do have Venus entering Cancer, which I think is a pretty cool day to have Venus entering Cancer, because Cancer, is ruled by the moon, which often represents the mother in our charts, but Cancer rules the fourth house and does have a connection to family. So I do think it's kind of cool that Venus is entering Cancer on the day that we have Father's Day. Before Venus enters Cancer, though, I will note that Venus is going to make that square to Neptune, so that anaretic degree point. And so you see that in this chart, Venus at 29 degrees Gemini will be squaring the 29 degrees Neptune. And so, again, like the Gemini meets the Pisces square, and we can kind of have this, tension happening where we don't necessarily feel super grounded or in alignment in certain ways, especially when it comes to relationships. And, Venus in Gemini squaring Neptune and Pisces makes us more likely to have delusional thinking or elusive thinking when it comes to a relationship that we're in. And so that's something, Mercury is going to be a part of this square more directly, I think the following day, but Mercury is already kind of in there. Yeah. So Mercury the next day is gonna be a part of that square. But after that square, we have both Venus and Mercury at the 0 degree point of Cancer together conjunct. Very different energy, very emotional, very focused on self-care. So once we get kind of out of this Gemini ramped up energy, we're not in Cancer season yet, but we're starting to move more towards that need for nourishment. What else is happening here? We've got Mercury making a hard aspect to Pluto. So Mercury and Venus conjunct are going to make what's called an inconjunct or quincunx to Pluto in Aquarius. And so again, there's a lot of deep growth, reflection, the subconscious, is coming up in a way where maybe we're examining relationships to family. I mean, having it be Father's Day right before this isn't surprising to me that we might be in this place of reflecting on our relationship with our families and inherited perspectives and communication dynamics. Those types of things are dominant. And the 17th is a really big day for transits with the moon. The moon is going to be in Scorpio. Let's see. When does it enter Scorpio? Early in the morning. So 2:38 a.m. the moon's going to enter Scorpio and is going to be making a trine to Venus and Neptune and Mercury. Yeah, so it's a very watery energy. So the 17th, we're going to be that Monday, we might be feeling a lot more introspective and like we need a lot more rejuvenation. This would be a good time to stay at home. And, I know it's the beginning of the week, so most people work, but you're going to probably feel like you want a lot of rest starting out the week. So Tuesday, the 18th, we're going to have Venus making that inconjunct to Pluto. So that's happening pretty early in the morning, the day before we had Mercury making it. So Venus inconjunct Pluto. Again, there can be some tension in relationship dynamics. We might be kind of seeing deeper into a situation than where we've seen before regarding relationships with someone, relationships. 19th of June is Juneteenth. And then we also have the moon entering Sagittarius, and the moon's going to be making a lot of aspects to Pluto, Venus, Jupiter, and Mercury during the day. Moon in Sagittarius, we have more of a need to break free and get out of maybe that internal bubble that we've been in. So, I think Monday and Tuesday, we might be feeling really introverted and introspective. And then by Wednesday, with the moon moving into Sagittarius, we're like, okay, get me out of this funk. I need to go do something. I'm starting to get a little froggy throat. Okay, so June 20th, we have our summer solstice. So we are officially entering summer. This is also a holiday known as Litha. and the sun is entering Cancer. So summer solstice is always marked by the sun entering the cardinal water sign of Cancer. So now we're in Cancer season. Happy birthday, Cancers. Cancer is the cardinal water sign of the zodiac, ruling the fourth house. Cardinal signs are all about activating and initiating energy within their element. Water is all about the emotional and spiritual realms. And so initiating energy when it comes to how we nurture ourselves and others. Cancer is also ruling the fourth house related to family. The moon is the ruler of Cancer. So there's a strong connection to the mother and matriarchal energies as well. On the 21st, we have the moon entering Capricorn, and we also have Mercury making a sextile to Mars and Taurus. This is a really positive energy in the sense that we're able to take kind of how we're thinking and feeling about things and apply it into the mundane material world in a really grounded, practical way. We also have a full moon in Capricorn on this day. The moon is in detriment in Capricorn, but you know, I actually really love a Capricorn moon because I think for me, having a Pisces moon, it is really grounding for me. And in this, you know, full moon energy, we might be reflecting a lot on our relationship to how we get things done, you know, in the world, relationship to family. Man, my dog is having a chronic cough. I'm feeling really throaty all of a sudden. I'm going to take a second here to clear my throat. Let me pause this. Okay, I just cleared my throat a bit and hopefully my cough will die down. I don't know what is going on. Okay, so June 21st, we talked about full moon in Capricorn a little bit. So Capricorn is all about initiating and taking action in the material, the earthly realm. It rules the 10th house. That has to do with our career, our public life, you know, how we are being driven to succeed. And Cancer, you know, is about the hearth, home, and family, our internal spiritual world. So those are the two themes that come up just in the ether as a collective, but wherever you have Cancer, Capricorn in your chart and in your horoscope is where that energy is going to be influencing you. So once I have all the horoscope videos done, you'll be able to watch your horoscope and see kind of what that full moon theme is for you. And full moons are about releasing and letting go as well as manifestation. So this will be a powerful time for that, especially at the early degrees of Capricorn. It's a 1 degree Capricorn. So what are you starting? You know, what do you hope to start in the material? Excuse me. Okay, so on June 22nd, we're going to have our sun in Cancer making a hard aspect to Pluto in Aquarius. Sun-Pluto aspects can definitely have us feeling a need for transformation and rebirth around identity and ego, sense of self. There's so much this year around identity. We had so much energy in Aries. Chiron in Aries has really been bringing a lot of that stuff up. And yeah, we're having a lot going down kind of around how we're expressing self and whether or not we feel like we're in alignment with expressing self, and that kind of transformative energy around ego death and ego rebirth. I'm going to try to get through this fast because I don't know what's going on with my throat. It just kind of came up again. It's just very odd. It's very bizarre what's happening in my body right now. All right, so on the 23rd, we have the moon entering Aquarius, and it's going to team up with that Pluto energy. So Pluto is really activated this June with all this air energy. On Monday, we're just going to have Pluto and Aquarius making aspects to Pluto, the Sun, Jupiter, Venus, and Mars. And then on the 25th, the moon is going to enter the mutable waters of Pisces in the evening. Moon in Pisces has us feeling a need to connect to our spirituality, our creativity. It's a very psychic, intuitive placement. We're going to be feeling that energy over the next couple of days. And then on the 26th, we're going to have Mercury in Cancer making a trine to Saturn in Pisces. This is also a really good time for connecting to the spiritual realm. It enhances psychic energy. For addicts, this could be a really challenging time because we're more inclined to want to escape through substances. So this is also a really good time to lean into your recovery anchors. Great energy for creativity. So this is a good time to, work on art projects, especially music projects. We're very receptive to channeling kind of from the imaginal realm. Dreams also may be really enhanced during this time since we have the moon in Pisces also making aspects to a lot of the frequencies of energy happening celestially right now. On the 27th, we're just going to have the moon in Pisces making aspects to Mars, Saturn, Mercury, and Uranus. On the 28th, we are going to have the moon entering Aries, and then we're going to have Mercury in Cancer squaring that Chiron in Aries. So again, wounds around perspective of self, communication, how we express feelings and vulnerability could come up for us. Venus in Cancer is going to make a harmonious aspect to Mars and Taurus on this day, which is really positive for sex. This is a good time to connect connect sexually to yourself and somebody else. This is a pleasure seeking energy, so we might have an opportunity on the 28th for some positive things in terms of creativity, sexual abundance. But there's definitely some tension on this day too. So however you choose to express yourself around those themes, you might have to be extra mindful and cautious with the Mercury square to Chiron, but the Venus sextile to Mars is kind of like ramping up that need for connection. On Saturday, the 29th, we have Saturn stationing retrograde. And it looks like it's going to be stationing retrograde at 19 degrees of Pisces. So look where you have 19 degrees of Pisces in your chart. If you have anything at 19 degrees in your chart, and Saturn's going to be kind of going back over some of those points that it's already been hitting over the month of June. And then we have Mercury making a sextile to Uranus. So it's kind of interesting. It's like this weekend that we have this energy, there's some communication issues around how we express our emotions that get brought up. And then the Mercury sextile to Uranus is very much about how do we make changes in our communication? Like those things are just going to happen anyways. We're going to be kind of forced into having to make some changes around our communication styles and patterns and the way that we perceive things. And in Cancer and Taurus, it's definitely around vulnerability and kind of, even our practical, pragmatic approach to vulnerability might not be working for us. I think one of the things in dog training that we always talk about is how behavior isn't fixed. So even if you try to be really scientific about it and on paper, if everything were to work out perfectly in this way, then 1 + 1 should equal 2, and this is the behavior you should be able to get, blah blah blah. But with behavior, things aren't really predictable in that way because it's not, emotions and behavior are not math equations. It's not the same as like taking a piece of paper and a piece of paper and saying now I have 2 pieces of paper. Emotions, you could have one day where something really triggers you and maybe there's all these leading up events that make sense. But if you're in a different emotional state one day, maybe those same leading up events affect you behaviorally differently on a different day because you're just feeling differently that day. Like it's so nuanced. And that's why I like astrology, because it takes all of those nuances into account. And I think that that's kind of the theme of this 29th day. Like there's so much nuance into how we feel and how we act and how we perceive things. Like one day, one thing might make us feel a different way than on a different day with a different set of circumstances. So there's a lot of opportunity for reflection around that on the 29th and working through those themes. Let's see. So on the 30th, on Sunday the 30th, which I believe is our last day of the month, the moon is going to enter Taurus. And so we'll be kind of more in this, yummy Taurus energy. The moon in Taurus, the moon is exalted in Taurus. It's one of my favorite energies. It's a great time to just focus on nourishing yourself, especially with the sun in Cancer. Having the sun in Cancer with the moon in Taurus is a great time to kind of just, spend some time at home, beautifying things around the home, nourishing yourself with good food, connecting to people in a way that feels really homey and family oriented. Connecting with family can be really positive during this time too. Think about the Empress card in the tarot for the last day of June and see if she's easily accessible to me in this deck. But yeah, here she is. This is very much kind of the energy we're ending the month out on. So yeah, it's not, I would say, like a super rocky month, but it's also not the smoothest month in regard to some of the emotional things that come up. But it is a really positive time for us to be redefining who we are, being open-minded to different perspectives, different ways of thinking about things. There's so much opportunity for us to grow beyond where we've been when it comes to our comfort zones, our perspectives, how we approach a problem. If you think about, the majority of this energy being in Gemini for the start of the month, Gemini and Virgo being ruled by Mercury are both signs that have to do with problem solving. And so if you have a set of problems, going forward into June that need your attention, this is a really positive month for analyzing and strategizing the way through all of it and kind of how do I apply myself and get things done. Media marketing, branding, like I was talking about how some of those wounds come up during this month of how you're perceived by others and how do you get over the perspective of others and get more into what works for you, what works for you and who's your audience. A lot of people that are not drawn to me are not necessarily my audience. I have a whole group of people that are drawn to the things that I offer and the things that I do, and that's my audience, So how do I make those people that are interested in what I'm doing, interested in booking my services or supporting me in what I'm doing? And how do I not let the people who are not my audience deter me from that? Because I think that the big Chiron and Aries with all of these transits hitting at reflections and even some of the Neptune, Saturn, and Pisces stuff around creativity and imagination, this Venus and Gemini energy of how it is impacted by our relationships is that not everybody's going to like you, and that's okay. You don't like everything and everybody. So how do we come together and find like-minded people and share and express ourselves openly and confidently while also being open to growth and criticism and evolution, and overcoming some of our obstacles that, we're going to face in June that really have to do with us just growing beyond our comfort zone and where we've been, which most people say they want until they're tested. And then once you're tested to do it, you're like, oh my gosh, what am I doing? I'm that person. I always tend to want to grow beyond where I've been. And then once push comes to shove, I'm like, oh no, I got what I asked for. It's so hard, challenging to meet it where it's at sometimes. All right, well, that is June. I apologize for being a little like this. I don't know what's going on with my throat and I'm not totally feeling well today. So I did my best and I will get the horoscope videos done for you guys. So make sure to keep your eye out over the next couple of days to watch your horoscope for June. All right. You can find me at the Lady of Leosure on Instagram or at thesobercurator.com. Hit the like, subscribe button if you want to get notified for when I post these. I do them every month, usually either the last week of the month before or I post them sometimes the first week of the month that I'm covering. And yeah, I hope to see y'all soon. All right, bye.